Welcome everyone to this interview by Rodney Leadership Symposium. Man, God gave me a vision, and I saw this even before it was complete. I just feel like the world needed more visionaries and leaders, and actually when I assembled this group of wonderful people here, I was very, very careful and tedious. And as you can see, I have a great group of people on this panel. I would like to thank Lewis Media Studios for taking part in this and recording this segment. This location is 8 Benson Street here in Hartwell, Georgia. So if this is a place that you would like to utilize, please contact Mr. DJ Lewis. Look, my panel here, I want to thank you so much for taking part into this leadership symposium. According to LinkedIn, they say, if you sit next to a high performer, if you're within 25 feet of a high performer, it increases your productivity by 15%. But if you sit near a low performer, it decreases your productivity by 30%. I must say, my productivity just increased by 60%. And thank you so much. All right, I want to allow my panel to introduce themselves, and we will start with Mr. Ryder.
I'm Josh Ryder. I'm the principal at Elbert County High School. I've been an educator, a teacher and coach, and administrator for the past 20 years. So I am happy to be here today and looking forward to it.
Hello, I'm Antonio Derricott. I'm principal at Cedar Shoals High School in Athens, Georgia, where I've been at the school since 2017, been in education for a long time, since 2000. I'm also the pastor of Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church in Elberton, Georgia. So I get a chance to see a lot of people from all walks of life and to make impacts on lives in all kinds of ways. And I'm glad to be here today.
I'm Brooke McDowell. I'm the practice administrator at the Medical Center of Elberton. I've been there for the past 25 years. I'm very delighted to be here today.
Glad to have you.
Good afternoon. I'm Darren Rucker. I'm a local police officer. I actually worked in Elberton as a police officer close to 28 years. I'm currently working Clark County at this point in time, but just enjoy being around people and just love community. I'm glad to be here today.
Glad to have you. Thank you so much. Look, there's a gentleman. His name is Vusi Temakwayo. He's from South Africa. And he's considered one of the smartest person on the continent, the top 1% from an intellect standpoint. And he was sharing something. He's an entrepreneur, he's an author, and he was saying how the difference between managers and leaders. And here is how he described it. When it comes to making decisions, a manager has this much information with this much time, with this much impact. But he says in leadership or leaders, you have this much information with this much time, with this much impact. That's how important leadership is. But Dr. Miles Monroe goes a little deeper. And here's what he says. A manager maintains things. A leader changes everything. A manager follows policy. A leader creates policy. A manager keeps tradition. Leaders break it. Managers focus on the bottom line. Leaders focus on the horizon. Managers focus on doing the right thing. But those leaders, they want to know actually if we're doing the right thing. If you're led by a manager, he says, you will never grow. I want to start this out with focus questions for each one of you within your chosen field. Mr. Ryder, you're leading through a time that we're experiencing metal detectors in schools. You're the first principal to encounter that. How have you led through that?
I think it's setting a tone and talking to our staff, making sure that everybody's on the same page with the fact that this is something that we need to be proactive and to try to make everybody feel safe, to make everybody understand that we're looking out for the good of the school. It's definitely not something that we want to have to be a reality, but the fact is it's been all around us. I mean, just a few years ago in Townville, South Carolina, tiny little school just over the South Carolina border, it happened there. It can happen anywhere. And so, you think of, oh, it's going to happen in the big city. It's not near us. But the reality is it can happen everywhere. We do suffer in our society today with mental health. That's an issue that we have a hard time addressing. People have a hard time talking about. And so you never know when somebody's experiencing those type of issues. We try to build relationships, and I still don't think that the metal detectors or weapon detectors that we have in place replace our ability to interact with one another and to notice, Pastor, I think something's wrong with you today. Are you okay? How can we address that person to person? So those machines don't replace those interactions. And that's important. And that's what I've tried to convey to our staff is when you're on duty and when you're around the building, interact with our kids, talk to them, because that's the best way to notice if something's off. Yes. And there's a different energy around people sometimes when things aren't well. And so you can talk to them and get them to the help that they need. We have great counselors. We have wonderful people in our building who are willing to make those connections with our kids. So even though we have the weapons detectors in place, the message that I've tried to get across to our staff is that doesn't replace those personal interactions, because you can pick up on those minor details, find out when something's wrong. Interacting with the kids, you hear about what's going on in their lives, in their communities. That's where we pick up on our minor issues, and we're able to make a real difference with our kids, not just when the thing beeps when they go through the metal detector.
That's right. Thank you so much for that. Pastor Derrick, here's your focus question. But I also want to thank you again. You married my wife and I. My wife, she's sitting over there in the corner, but thank you so much for that. Your focus question is this. You lead a school and you lead a church. Is there a switch that you have to turn off from leading in the school environment to your Mount Calvary Baptist Church environment?
That's a great question. I think the easiest way to answer that question is I tell people, as they say, that no prayer in school and separation church and state. I can't change who I am where I go. At the same time, what I try to implore upon people is the environment you're in, you still have to realize the environment that you're in. So I say that in such a way where I try to explain to some employees when they want to send out their personal messages and trying to invoke Christ, or if they want to press the envelope on certain issues. And I try to get them to understand, because they take the mantra of, well, you're a pastor, so you definitely are going to let me do this. And I tell them, this is Clark County's information. And so if I allow you to do it, I have to allow anybody else their own personal views to be able to do that as well. And so what I tell people, considering people say, why do you smile all the time? Why do you interact, and why does it seem like even if a fight breaks out that you still don't just go crazy? I say I try to keep my sanity about myself so I can show other people you lead by example. Servant leadership shows that if you lose your mind when things are going wrong, then others will lose their mind as well. That's right. And one thing that I do, and I try to identify in the church as well as the school, and you'll know this very well, is even though you may have persons in different leadership roles, if something truly happens, something that's a trauma event, that doesn't mean those are going to be people that you're going to be able to count on when things are going topsy-turvy or any other kind of way. So I try to identify people that can be those key leaders that, although they may not necessarily be in a leadership role, have shown leadership capacity. So that way, when things happen, we're able to call on them to be in a place to try to more or less be a stable environment and a stable person be able to help. How does that relate to your question? I have to surround myself with people that also can invoke and carry the same message that I'm trying to carry. And so that makes a key difference. It may not be by title only, but it's about trying to make sure that when you understand what your position is, whether it be at the church or the school, if you surround your people with people that also believe in the same things you believe in, then it makes for a much easier passage to be able to try to get things done. It's a heavy lift, and I tell people all the time that I'm not the kind of person that has to go in and say, John 3:16 says this in school. What I try to do is I try to explain messages that we can invoke from the Bible. Jesus taught using parables, and he didn't have to take a Bible and beat people over the head. I try to show people that the same kind of kindness you can show in the church, you can show in a school setting, and I hope that becomes infectious where it can pass on to other people.
Man, that's so great. God, that's so great. Ms. Brooke, being the leader of the Elberton Medical Center in Elberton, Georgia, you lead roughly 4 generations of individuals, because I know who works there. How challenging is that when you're dealing with 4 generations of people?
Well, you know, the good thing about that is I've been there for 25 years, so I know who I work with. I know who I work with. And I think that that's the key point here. You really need to be able to identify who you work with, their personality, know how they learn things, and, you know, break it down in a way that is good for them and is good for you. And so, you know, working with different people is definitely a challenge sometimes, because everybody does learn differently. But, you know, the fact that we have 4 generations of people, I think speaks volumes about the practice that I work for, and the kind of leadership that's in place there, because you have people who want to be there. Mm-hmm. You know, we've had stay in power for a lot of years, mm-hmm. and for, you know, you think I've been there for 25 years, that's a long time. I have people that's been here for 40.
Wow.
So,
wow.
You know, we have a really great place to work, and fortunately, everybody wants to help each other. And if there's something that I'm not explaining well, I may, you know, take somebody to the side and say, "Can you help me maybe relay this information to this person and see if that can help?" And it does.
You know, one thing I really appreciate about your leadership is that when you have a question, there's no shame for you to. You've called me with questions, and Rodney, how do I navigate that? That's huge in leadership. And I also want to share with you, thank you for leading us through 2020. And I think, you know, people from Elberton really appreciate that. You led us through 2020 through COVID. And but thank you so much for that.
Well, it was not me. It was definitely a joint effort
yes,
between
of course.
everybody. But thank you.
Yes. Thank you for that. Brother Darren, your focus question. You recently was the leader of the school district's bus transportation. We spoke a little bit last night. Tell us, how did you, or what did you learn? Because we speaking of generations, sure. You was leading baby boomers. Right. What did you take from that experience?
Well, that's a great question, Rodney. Of course, you know what my background was.
Yes,
I come from the law enforcement family. This month makes 29 years for me.
Yeah.
Of course, most of that was at the Elberton Police Department. So, of course, coming through an era in leadership, I held a captain's position there at the Elberton Police Department. I went from, as I said, raising 19-year-olds who come, you know, directly out of high school. From 19 to, you know, that gap of 25 of the younger ones, or we may hit our 60s or whatever, to going into the Elbert County School District, which is a great system. From going from working with 19-year-olds, I had employed with me was 50, 60, 70, and even 80-year-old employees. So yes, absolutely, it was a total difference. Of course, some will let you know real quick that, you know, I was working here before you was born and thought of.
Yeah.
And I say, you'll probably be living here, still living after I leave here. But one of the biggest things there is just having patience. It taught me a lot about having patience because they've been there, done that, and wrote the book and made the story. The employees that I had, or what I call as team members that I had, I actually rode a bus back in the day. If it wasn't from going back and forth to school. I was in the band program with music and arts, riding after school programs. So, of course, it's always a challenge because what I had to learn as a leader is just to sit back and listen. Because you can always learn from anybody. It can always be a teachable moment each and every day.
That's huge.
And each and every day that I walked in the building, I try to come in, they call me the alphabet supervisor or whatever, that, I always use the P word for being positive. The T word of transition. Transition is always good. Change is always good. It's not always bad, but just sitting down, just having the conversation with them and let them be engaged, let them be a part of that product. I want them to give me feedback and give me good information where I can disseminate it down the line or either up the line to make it better for, our community, for them, and also our greatest prize there of our student scholars.
Wow. Man, that's awesome. That's a great, great, great answer. Let's delve deeper. I began studying leadership really intensely in 2010. I dibbled and dabbled in leadership 2005, 2006 because I was leading some teammates. And I wanted to make sure I was leading correctly. Two of the best leaders I've ever had was my mom and the late Blake Thompson, former director down in Washington, Georgia. I saw my mom lead a family, 3 boys, no man in the house. She showed me so much. Blake Thompson, he was the type that he cared about your dreams and your desires and your aspirations and your goals, and he helped push you to that, even if it meant leaving his ambulance service one day. The question for you: what is the blueprint into building a great organizational culture while focusing on the intangibles such as morale, attitudes, momentum? Here's a biggie: trust. Mr. Ryder, I'd like to start with you. How do you build that type of organization?
I think Brooke touched on it earlier when she talked about knowing her people. And so as a leader, your job is to get to know your people and their strengths and to put them in a position where they're going to be successful, where they have the opportunity to expand on their strengths and allow their strengths to spread to others around them. You talked about, the influence that being around effective people have on their peers, on their neighbors. And so you've got to be able to know what those strengths are and apply it. And sometimes in our field, we talk about young teachers, you're talking about training new cops. It's not enough just to put them in that room with a great teacher. You almost have to point out, say, listen, I want you to look at how they do this particular thing, and point out the things that you want them to see and to watch and to notice, because they don't necessarily know what they're looking for sometimes. So when you're able to know your staff and know who is really successful or who is really capable in certain areas, I think that makes you a better leader because you can then play on their strengths. And so I think that's one thing that I've always tried to do, is surround myself with people who have different strengths than I do. Understanding that diversity and that a different viewpoint is not a challenge to my authority, but it makes me better because it gives me better perspective, different perspective. Not everybody should agree with me or be a yes man. You're not looking to surround yourself with people who don't have their own opinions. You need to surround yourself with people who are competent thinkers, who will express in a professional way their ideas and their thoughts, even if they're different than yours. And that's hard to do sometimes. But when you trust your people, you mentioned trust, that's so important. If you recognize those strengths and you trust people to do it, it may not be the way that you want it done, it might be better. And so that's a challenge as a leader. You have to be willing to allow people to do things a different way than you might have done it, and you might get better results than you would have gotten.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Pastor Derek, I read some data in regards to, according to Gallup, 33% of employees are engaged in the workplaces. 33%. What is it that decreases people, because I know you lead a large number of people, what's decreasing engagement in the workplace?
That's a great question. I think more so than anything is apathy, how people have gotten very comfortable after COVID. COVID gave some people what they really wanted, and that was an opportunity to decompress and get away from it all. And now it's still hard to try to engage and bring people back into the fold. Sadly, when we look at employees, look at people that are trying to do the right thing, it is a small nugget. You say 33, I'm still shocked. I think it may not even be that high of people that actually are trying to do the right thing. It's no different than we talk about students in a classroom or employees that are working in a factory, how you have people that no matter what is said, they're gonna be the rule follower. They're gonna do it with fidelity, do it to a T. But it only takes one or two people to try to sway them the other way. And so while they may not have the intention of going the other way, they may say, we're supposed to leave here at 4, leave at 3:50. It'll be a lot easier for you to get out of here. And those people may try that one time and say, you know what, that wasn't too bad. And say 3:40 sounds even better. And so you try to find people that not only are able to hold people accountable, but also remind people that what's the end result. You hit on, and you just talked about the blueprint. Ms. Ryder was talking about what we see, and I look at even within that, what's the end game? What are we trying to accomplish? And so it may seem easy, but we look at morale, we look at culture of buildings, we look at all those different things that go into it, but character speaks a lot. You see that piece of trash on the floor. Somebody can easily say, well, we have janitors, we have custodians for that. But the character says, pick it up. We're all part of this together. So it's about trying to find those people that regardless of who may try to sway them the other way, somebody that's still going to be willing to say, come on, y'all, we can do better than that.
That's right.
And that's so crucial to what we have to see with employment today.
God, that's huge. Brooke, just from you have a number of people that you're overseeing as well. From a psychological standpoint, how do you create psychological safety for your team members, teammates, staff to come into your office and share something with you, but they have the psychological safety that you're not gonna go out and, well, let me tell you about the meeting I had yesterday with someone else?
Yeah, I think that comes from just fostering trust throughout the years. It does not always begin like that. Somebody really has to get to know who you are. They have to trust you with these small little nuggets of information before they can really let you know who they are or trust you with information. I mean, I have people every day who come in my office, and some people, they need advice. Some people need me to just listen. I need to meet them where they're at. I have an open door policy. You can always come and talk to me. If, you know, I'm going to give you a couple of different options. I'm going to either tell you how we can correct something. I'm going to tell you that we probably won't be able to correct something, or we're going to meet in the middle and find a compromise. And so, you know, I think just having that relationships are very, very important to me. Because I do have a diverse group of people. Sometimes I may not know exactly how you feel about things. And I may say to you, okay, let me come back to you. Let me take a step back and, you know, collect my thoughts, gather some information that will help me better serve you before, you know, we move forward. And so that's what I typically try to do.
That's valuable. We're going to lean towards like feedback from your people, getting feedback. Brother Darren, my wife and I, we've been married. Early in our marriage, I approached her one time and said, babe, what is it? Where is my blind spot? What is it that I can do better that I don't realize that I'm doing bad in? But I had to humble myself for the answer. And I shared it with her. And I started working towards that. You have captains and police chiefs and all. Do they create an environment where you're able to share information about them that, man, this might be a blind spot for you. Can I share some information with you? How important is that?
Oh, Rodney, is very important. Now, of course, I come through a generation, I'm a third out of a fourth generation in law enforcement. So it differs, and of course, the first two in the generation were both in supervisory positions or whatever. I can imagine that if I went back and talked to my uncle or talked to my dad about how you should handle things in law enforcement, they would not like it now, but what they see what's going on throughout the nation now, that law enforcement have changed from the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, even 90s. Even now, even after, post-COVID, things have changed a lot. I worked for a really good leader at the police department as I grew up through the police department, where he had open door policy where you're able to sit down and, just have the conversation to say, hey, I think that things will probably work out better handling it a certain way. They may sit back and say, well, tell me about it. And you just kind of tell your story, because trends are different now. Of course, I know the principals can say too, back in the day it was yes ma'am, no ma'am, yes sir, no sir. Now, they may say a yes, they may not add nothing to the end or no or whatnot. But what we see in the police industry now, that you're seeing leaders very open to making things a better place, because now we're under the scope of cell phones now.
Yes.
Everything is being recorded. Everything, if you're not doing things just right, it will be exposed out there on the social media and things of that nature. So we would like to come back if it's something's out there negative, that say, hey, we have collaborated, we have worked with our employees to try to make things better, because we all fall short.
Of course.
One of the things I can say that my second mom, Mother Marie, can tell me is always do what's right. That is always the T word, as we say, it's always a teachable moment for all of us. We can learn from everybody. We can I even learn from my grandchildren of things they have even learned in the classrooms that make me think, I need to be a better person doing this and that. So a lot of times you can't turn back the clock, but you can wind it up again and just go forward and make really good multiple choices. And that's how you're able to keep great team members staying number one on your team and keeping them employed because of the T word again, trust. Just being able to trust and just make that great blueprint that is out there today. But that's my feeling about it. And I'm hoping as a leader too, back that I hope that people felt like they could speak to me as well. Because a lot of times when they leave there, you learn to come away from your desk, not sit there. When I started off as a young leader, I thought it was something to sit behind that desk because I'm leading. But I learned that I got more out of a person by being able to sit in these chairs that's in front of my desk and have the conversation.
Wow.
And take notes. And sometimes, and if you go back and tell them, hey, I thought about what you said, and I've made some changes in my life, but I want to pause to say today, thank you, because you changed my life. So it's always a teachable moment.
That's awesome. Mr. Ryder, you asked earlier, how was my daughter Emerson? And a couple of weeks ago, Emerson was walking her dog in her neighborhood, and another dog began to chase them. Emerson's dog took off. Emerson's finger got caught in the leash, and she fell to the ground, did some scratches to her knees, and she called me, crying, of course. And later we found out she fractured her finger. Here's what's big. She was scheduled to work 2 of her jobs on that day with different hours. She got 2 experiences. The first employer called and said, this happened, and that leader said, well, go take care of go see the doctor, go take care, I hope you get to feeling better. The second employer, she called, well, you got 1 minute to be here. I don't know what you're gonna do. What particular employer you think the one she didn't go back to? My point here is how we, and she's a Gen Zer. You got to be careful with the Gen Zers. Sure. They don't play. If they're not treated well, valued, seen, respected, and protected, they will leave you. How do you handle situations where teachers are dealing with a family crisis or don't have a babysitter? Where does your empathy come from?
It definitely comes from my own experiences with my family. I was working at school the day that my dad passed away, and I found out while I was there. So I went next door to the assistant principal and said, I've got to go, something happened to my dad. And there was no batting their eyes. They handled that as smoothly as anything they could ever done. So I've been exposed to people who have had empathy and who have shared in their concern for me and my family. My wife and I lost a pregnancy, and I found out about that at school as well. So I had the first appointment I didn't go to her. The first appointment that I didn't go with her to the appointment, that happened. And got the call at work, and same type thing. I had to say, listen, I've got to go right now. And the empathy and the love and support that was shown to me made me feel appreciated, made me feel valued. So now that I'm in a leadership role, when somebody has those type of situations that you can't help. You just try to show empathy, and you want to treat them the way that you were treated and the way that you want to be treated. And I feel like that goes a long way in getting that staying power and getting people to want to be there and be a part of a family, because that's what we become. We spend so much time with our staff, so much time with our peers and our colleagues, that you almost have to become a family. And if you don't, I feel like that shows that you're not empathetic.
That's
it shows
right.
that you don't care.
Yes, sir.
So when those things come up, you ask them, hey, how's your dad? How's your mom? How are your kids? I know they were sick the other day. Are they doing better? You ask those questions, you follow up with them, and you don't make them feel bad about it. We all have those situations, and our job is a part of our life. It's not our whole life. We have to be people outside of work. You have to help your family. You have to be there for them. And so if you're not given that opportunity, if you're criticized for it, you don't want to be a part of that workplace.
That's right.
And it's so easy today to find another job because nobody wants to work.
Yes, sir.
So you want to make sure you are valuing your employees. And you mentioned that the younger people, the new Gen Zers, they may quit on you that day. Where if I do that to older employees, they may not quit that day because they were taught, you live out your obligations and you finish. But they may start that day looking for their next position.
Yes, sir.
And so you may have lost them in that moment and just not know it yet. So I think that's very important to understand, that you have to treat people right. You have to believe that family is important, because it is. You're not just a product of your workplace. You are more than that to be a person.
That's powerful. Pastor Derek, I have one for you. I went shopping out here at Belts. I needed some T-shirts or something. And I spoke with one of the workers at Belts here in Hartwell. And I asked her the question. I said, what percentage of the community buy your merchandise? She said about 20%. 20% of their customers buy 80% of their inventory. The Pareto principle, it exists in all phases. They say leadership is 80% attitude, 20% skill. And even if I asked you what percentage of the church tithe, more than likely you'd probably say about 20%. 20% of your employees do 80% of the work and 80% do 20%. How do you work with the Pareto principle? You can't change it, but how do you navigate it? And I'm gonna piggyback something behind that. How do you find your hidden figures within your circle of staff or employees? Because there are hidden figures that exist there. There's some smart people that's working alongside you. How do you search and pick those people out?
So I'm gonna go backwards with what you just asked.
Okay.
It's almost like when I used to watch my grandmother when she was making jelly, and how she talked about how certain things would just rise to the top. And when I look at certain individuals when it comes with leadership, we may ask, we may basically beg, especially in education, or require people to be at certain events. We need you to cover this football game. You need to be at prom. The students are there, you have to be there. But you also look at the people that aren't required to be there, but it seems like, you know what? Brooke is always there.
Yeah.
You know what? Darren keeps showing up.
Yeah.
Mr. Ryder, you here again? And so before you know it, you have good people that rise to the occasion. And so what you have to internalize for yourself is, what is it about this person that keeps them wanting to keep showing up, to keep wanting to do things? And oftentimes they believe in what they're trying to do. They're trying to help grow whatever it is. They're trying to really help grow the students. They see the overall mission. They believe in healthcare. So they want to make sure that people are taking care of themselves, not just from the standpoint of making sure that if something happens, they're taken care of, but arming them with information. This is how you take care of yourself. And so you start seeing those little nuggets. And what I call them nuggets, because those are the kind of type things you need to drop in and put those away to remind yourself. And so then you start working with those individuals to try to see, hey, have you ever thought about a leadership role? And start really preparing and prepping them.
Wow.
I go back, and as we look at the 80-20, you begin to understand better how people really operate and how they also were raised in terms of their keys and the way that they put things out or the way they receive certain information. I love making sure that you have overarching information that you share with people, but inherently you have to know, just by doing a physical look at certain people, the way they receive information, their facial expressions say it all. We talk about all the time, nonverbal tells a story a lot quicker than verbal ever will.
Exactly
and
right.
so as soon as you say that something's gonna happen, you have those people that give you the faces like, not me. And you have other people like, let's march on Rome. And so you have to take more nuggets and look at how people react to certain things.
That's right.
And so that gives you an opportunity as a leader to be able to know for yourself, okay, I see where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Standardized testing time, that window's about to open up. I can't make it. It would say, no worries. You thought it was Tuesday, the test is Thursday, so you'll be fine. Just being able to realize that oftentimes people really don't have bad intentions, but at the same time, they don't necessarily want to do all this stuff either.
That's right.
And when you get in a position to where you constantly trying to get people to see that it's not a one-off, it's not just you, but we're all in this together.
Yes, sir.
And going back to what some of our panelists and great information that's already been shared, but I continually go back to, as I was a social studies teacher, and I looked at George Washington and some of the things he put in place. He had some great thinkers around him that didn't do the whole focus group think principle to where they were just yes people, but they quarreled, they argued a lot. But it was able to get to the point to where they were all working towards the same goal. And so you can't just have people that are just going to agree with you for everything, because that shows you will go down quickly with everything.
That's right.
But having people that will make you think about some things you normally would not think about. From a church setting or even at school, I tell people, please don't say, let me play devil's advocate. I don't like that phrase.
That's right.
But just present it from a different viewpoint, and let's see how we can work together. So then that heavy lifting that the 20% is doing, before you know it, it's hope that others will continue to try to lift as well, so that at 80 can gradually come down and everybody can be working on the same plan together.
Man, that's great. Ms. Brooke, I think you're a person who handles conflicts well.
Thank you.
And I know when you're working with a good number of people, conflicts are inevitable.
They are.
And how we approach the conflict determines a lot. You can either make it worse or you can make it better. How do you handle conflict among coworkers or team members?
Ooh, you know,
Yeah.
that's definitely a case-by-case situation.
Yeah.
You know, when you have 40 people in the same room, somebody's not going to agree. You know, I mean, that's just the bottom line. You know, conflict. Oof. I think that the best thing to do is going back to knowing who you are working with. I think it's about leading by example and showing somebody that you're going to do something that, you know, if you expect them to do it, then you're going to be able to do that yourself. As far as conflicts go, you know, they just happen. And my philosophy has always been, let's talk about it, but let's take a step back. Nothing good ever comes out of anger. And usually when you're having a conflict, somebody's angry. So if I see that happening, you know, I'm like, hey, let's take a breath, take a break, go grab a drink, you know, go take a walk around the building. Let's take a break. And I do try to diffuse a situation, you know, if it's getting a little bit out of hand. You know, I'll diffuse that situation. And then I will say, we need to have a conversation maybe tomorrow. Today, I want you guys to avoid each other. But tomorrow, when we've had a moment to, you know, settle ourselves down, then we need to have a conversation and figure out why this happened.
That's right.
To start with.
That's right.
So, you know, next day we'll come back and let's talk about it. What prompted this conversation to even start? What prompted this argument to happen? And see if we can all come to a place where everybody, you know, is kind of understanding, well, I see her point. I may not agree with it, but I understand it, and I'm going to try to do better in the future.
Gotcha. Speaking of conflict, sometimes, you know, people can say the wrong thing and they get terminated. And later they will submit some companies, organizations require you to do an exit interview. Brother Darren, have you ever witnessed an organization where they do what they call stay interviews, where you're able to write down why I want to stay here, but here's the problem? Have you ever witnessed anyone be able to write a stay interview, not an exit interview, but a stay interview?
I never experienced that, but that is something that would be great to be able to use. And once again, coming from another leader, to be able, that's something that I have just learned today to be able to utilize. Because there's a lot of things in all of our organizations, we can always try to make things better. You know, why do I want to stay here? But this is the reason why I'm leaving, especially when you're looking at people who's been there for, you know, some decades for you, 10, 20, 30 years. And now I'm ready to let it go because, you know, people say all the time, you know, we got these young folks coming in here, got different minds or whatever. But, you know, you try to smile and you just try to just hold your composure to like, okay, well, just tell me about it. I think that would be something great that I can use in any field. If I was back in the school district, what can we do to keep you here? And sometimes the ones who wants to leave or whatever, sometimes it might be a turning point that it's something that I may be able to fix, because if it's problems here in the organization, it's really my problem, because I was tasked to do a duty to make sure that everything is running smoothly and operating well. So sometimes, even though you may not be the problem, but hey, I used to get complaints about, you know, well, I want to be treated as a professional or whatnot. You know, we always talk about, well, hey, we want to always start off by being a professional. Or hey, nobody don't know what we do, that we're very important in the organization. We can go back to bus drivers, I can go to police officers, I can go to everything. But going back to bus drivers, man, they are so important to us, because our students, our kids, they're the first people, the kids are the first people they see as us.
That's
as
right.
When I was in the on the educational side or whatnot. We can, number one, make it a good day, or we can make it a bad day and give them a bad day, and we certainly don't want to do that. But if we're not doing that, it's a problem with the leadership here inside. So I would want to be the one to lead by example. Teach them to make really good choices.
That's
it's
right.
all about multiple choices.
Yeah.
But those are the things that I would probably like to see even in law enforcement. What can we do to get you to stay? Because there's so many jobs out there each and every day that you can go anywhere, but just sitting back a lot of times you are able to salvage some of those employees and sit down with them. And if I know you want to retire in some years and we want that good pension, or what can we do to get you to stay a little bit longer? Yeah. And let me work with you. Let me work with the employers to make it a better place.
Because I know, there's a high percentage of people that you work with, man, they think about leaving in privacy at home every day. Like, man, I just can't take it anymore. But yeah, I think stay interviews would be something progressive if it was ever offered into an organization.
Absolutely.
To my educators here, man, this is a tough one here. Tavis Smiley in 2007, he organized a summit, and he was speaking with an educator, Dr. Julia Hare. She said something really profound. Now, this is in 2007. And they was talking about the temperature of the educational system. And in conclusion, she said that teachers are afraid of the principals are afraid of the superintendent is afraid of the school board afraid of the parents afraid of the kids, and the kids ain't scared of nobody. That was in 2007. Recently, and I know you've probably seen it, a North Carolina student assaulted a teacher in the classroom, slapped her multiple times. There was no fear in him. He stayed in the room doing this encounter. But probably what disturbed me a little bit even more was a student was feminine and nobody came to the defense of that teacher. What is it? How do, y'all are special. Absolutely. How do you lead through an incident like that, if it occurred or if it has occurred? How do you lead through that?
You're right, it's tough. I mean, Darren mentioned earlier how everything you do is on video nowadays. And it's almost more important to the kids, I won't say almost, it's more important sometimes to take that video rather than offer a helping hand.
Yeah.
And so, we try to use those as teachable moments. We want to explain why we don't want those things in our school, why we don't settle our differences that way, why there are better alternatives. So we always try to help and teach through those moments. Sometimes they're hard lessons to learn when there are those big issues that occur, and those lack of respect moments happens a lot of times so fast, and they escalate because there is a power struggle, or there is something that probably both sides could have done better. And so it's important to point out to those people that as you're dealing with it, you're not just condemning everything that they've done, because there may be something that instigated that, something that caused it. So you have to acknowledge that they had a right to be upset, and that there were other things that should have happened differently, that they're not 100% to blame, but they are responsible for their actions, and there are consequences that follow from their actions. And everybody's quick to claim self-defense, and I only did this out of self. Well, when you fight back and when you continue to fight, even after you have the opportunity to get away, it's no longer self-defense. It may be justified in some cases, but it's not always self-defense like we like to claim. So I think it's just important that we teach through those moments, no matter how difficult they are, that we look at it. It doesn't define that person all the time. There can be patterns and there can be issues that can be defining moments, but if it's a standalone incident that's occurred, we definitely want to teach through that. We want to make sure that we try to explain better alternatives to solve your issues. But it is something that's difficult anytime you deal with those type situations, and there's not always a great answer. The reason things pop off and the reason things happen the way they do, we don't always have an answer for it. So just trying to find those teachable moments and look for ways that you can help people advocate for themselves and to maybe handle the next situation better than they did that one. And when you stay in education long enough and you see growth, especially from how a kid would have responded as a freshman to then how they respond to a similar situation as a senior, it really is rewarding to see those kids do come a long way, and they are listening to you, even though they may not say yes sir and yes ma'am. They are hearing the things that we're trying to pour into them, and it may take a while, but we are making progress. And so I think that's what we have to glean out of those situations and take out the good from what can be bad situations sometimes.
Piggyback on that, Pastor Derek.
So same lines, I look at trauma-informed practices. I oftentimes try to tell teachers don't get in power struggles with students. Nobody wins from that. Coming out from COVID, one of the things that we really realized that we were going to need was some mental health counselor in the building, not people just coming in from other agencies. We needed a full-time person in the building. That has been astronomical. We're dealing with just situations, and we actually have 2 behavior specialists in the building as well. It goes back to what we initially started talking about in this session, relationship building. When you're able to formulate relationships with students and realize that this child comes from a home where they've seen trauma, they easily get into conflict. This is a trigger for them. Just be very careful, because at the same time, just like when we look at assignments we give students, it's called differentiation. I can't remember which coach it was. It was said years ago where the coach was asked, so we hear you don't treat all your players the same. And he used a cuss word and said, no, you can't, because you won't have a team.
Wow.
And so you have to know the students that you're dealing with, and just realizing that just because a child has their head down, you don't understand how that child was at home taking care of their 4 brothers and sisters last night, and they also are homeless. And so they were just trying to find somewhere to sleep. So knowing your students, knowing how things happen, and understanding things better, does it excuse the act? No, it doesn't. We still have to look at that we deal with students that come from, they need behavior intervention plans. They may be dealing with issues where they have special ed diagnoses, and we have to take all those things into consideration. But at the same time, don't create a power struggle. Don't violate personal spaces. Don't give triggers to students to make them want to go off. And at the same time, as you're building relationships, in turn, it is hope that instead of the child just filming and watching, that somebody will actually come to the aid of the teacher. When everybody stands around and more or less takes on the same attitude as the one that's directly involved, then that really shows that we have a huge problem, and that may be a bigger issue going on in that classroom.
Pastor, you mentioned something. You said just being able to listen to students and meet them where they are. Brooke, you shared a story with me. I just thought of this. And you remember telling me about a patient, but it was a child. And the information was received from the brother or sister. You had to listen to that other child because the other child knew what was going on. Do you remember that?
I do.
Share that story.
So this really speaks about the quality of care that my providers give.
Yeah.
And the importance of listening. So I had a doctor who was seeing a patient. It was a younger child, and brother was in the room with the sister and the parent, and we just about finished up treating the child, and the brother said, sure do wish that she could feel better because all she does is lay around on the couch. My doctor, he hears this, he's listening, he hears this information, and he says, you know what, let's get a simple blood test. So we get this simple blood test, and it turns out that child had leukemia.
Wow.
And if the brother had not been so adamant about wanting to play with the sister, and if we had not been listening, then that could have been missed for a while. So it just goes to show that listening to people is very, very important. Sometimes just listening is when you find out the key pieces of information that can make or break you.
Wow. Yeah, that was powerful when you shared that story with me, and it goes back to leadership. You know, listen to your people, what they're trying to tell you, because they're giving you the answer. We're nearing a close now, and here's how I would like to close this. Each one of you, starting with Mr. Darren here, by looking into the camera, what piece of advice will you give a future leader and a current leader to be successful? Whatever the success is, what information would you give someone that's valuable?
Okay. Well, what I would do today is just be a great listener, just like you've been hearing from the panel today. Being able to know your people, learn some things from them. One of the things I know everybody on this panel, they have in excess of 40, 50, or 60 employees in their buildings each and every day. I always try to find an important fact about each employee. Number one, just to let them know that, hey, I care, I thought enough to look up information on you. Little things by just letting them know that you appreciate them each and every day coming to work. Sometimes we have to be very personable. We get caught up in text messages saying that, hey, we really appreciate you. A lot of times we do emails and say, hey, we really value and appreciate your services. But little things that I think that helps us out even more is you just getting that pen and getting that thank you card and just drop a note on that thank you card just to let them know that you're very much appreciated. And another thing that you can do, that stamp that's 55 or 60 cents, even though you could stick that card in their mailbox, in their internal mailbox, what I usually do, I go ahead and just drop it in the mail. Because you never know what kind of day that person may have had. And you see that small envelope that came through the mail.
Wow.
And you're there with your spouse or you're there with your significant or whatever, and you open it up. What is this? Because sometimes we all get in our mind that, man, we can't make it. Nobody cares about what I do each and every day. And you open up that card and your team leader had said, hey, you do such a great job, and just know that you're appreciated, and we're just so thrilled to have you in our organization. And we just want you to be here. And we just thank you for all you have done here.
Wow.
That makes a huge difference. That little card may have changed their mind and gave them hope that where I wanted to retire at the end of the year, that I can make it 5 more years. So just little things like that, you tell your spouse that and they see that and they're thinking, man, even though he's very busy or she's very busy, he actually cares.
Man.
And it's all about showing them how much you care. And that's what I would tell new leaders going in and the leaders that we have here today. Show them how much they care. Let them know, even though we might find 9 deficiencies, if we could find one good thing and tell them about the good thing, the driving force. It doesn't have to be your team members. It can be the students in your classroom and just working with the band or whatnot. If you find good or you're reading things in the newspaper, I try to make sure that I listen to the news, look at the newspaper, and if I can find some good things even going on with their children, just let them know that, hey, I think that's a great job. I'm so excited about what he's doing in sports. I'm very excited about what he's doing in his academics. Those are some of the things that's just finding little snips of what they do each and every day.
Awesome. Ms. Brooke?
The biggest piece of advice that I can give anybody is humble yourself. you don't know everything. Even if you have an education from Harvard or Yale, you don't know everything. There's still a lot to learn. There's still a ton of information that I learn every day. And it's not just technical information. It's personalities. It's, learning about who you work with. Darren mentioned earlier, caring about who you work with, knowing some of the struggles that they're going through, asking them about problems that they have mentioned to you. Congratulating them when their child has done something good and it has been, recognized. Recognize that as well, and just remember who you are. You are never too good to, take a step back. And, one thing that I'm always disappointed to hear someone say is, "That's not my job." When you can show your employees that you can get on the floor and you can clean something up, and it doesn't matter if you're the highest paid employee or the least paid employee, all those things are valuable. Everyone in your organization is valuable. Yes. And they are important, and allowing them or expressing that gratitude to them and their importance to them is key.
Wow. Pastor Derrick?
What I would like to share for a future leader, or even a current leader, is just understanding that true leadership is not a dictatorship. We have to be willing to be firm but flexible. But at the same time, if we carry around a my way or the highway type mentality, you'll find yourself by yourself. And so it comes from the opportunity, just as Brooke was saying, humility. You have to be willing to be open and honest. And at times, sometimes that means we have to admit that, wow, I could have done that a better way, but let's continue to work together. And so to understand you're not set apart to just be by yourself. It's still, you need good people around you to help with the heavy lifting and be able to carry the load, but be willing to understand that as you continue to progress as a leader, if you want to remain as a leader, then you have to realize that sometimes you have to step back and look at and just evaluate self. And if you want to just be a leader for just dimes and dollars, then that will quickly lead to an end, because true leadership does not always pay what we think it should pay, but at the same time, you do it for a greater cause. And so current leaders oftentimes understand that, and future leaders, we try to get them to see that, that it is a greater reason to why. Leaders rise to the occasion. And so helping people see that although you may say you want a particular position, sometimes you have to realize that it doesn't work out the way that it needs to, and that's okay. But in true leadership, when your time comes, you'll be able to know it because everything will work out the way that it needs to.
Awesome. Mr. Ryder?
What I'd like to share with aspiring leaders is to focus on your perspective, take notice of things going on around you, and be aware of the people that are around you. Not everybody has the same perspective on different things. I recently read a book by Andy Andrews called The Noticer, who describes an older gentleman who's mentoring a teenager who's troubled and looking at things a little jaded. And so he's trying to pour into this young man, and they're sitting on the beach sharing a can of Vienna sausages and some sardines. And he asked the teenager, he says, "How would you describe what we're doing right now?" And the teenager says, "We're sitting in the sand, eating sardines and Vienna crackers, Vienna sausages." And he asks, "Well, how would you describe it?" And so the old man, in his wisdom, he says, "Well, I would say that I'm dining on surf and turf with an ocean view." And so that just kind of hit me that you can be in the same situation and have two completely different viewpoints on that situation. Neither are wrong, but there's definitely a better way to look at that and describe it and talk about it. And so the way that you describe your situation sometimes, or the way that you talk about the situation that you're in, if you're always negative and looking at the down and out and talking about what's going wrong, you can be caught up in that, and it can really affect how you feel about things. So if you'll take the positive perspective and try to focus on that and share those things as often as you can, even if it's a little win, share those positive moments that will take you a long way in life, and it will help change the way you see things in the future. So being willing to learn and to adjust and always to try to improve and learn from not only your experiences, but the experiences of those around you, being willing to listen and being open. We've shared a lot of great things, and we've talked about some things today that have made me a better person and made me want to continue to learn and be a better person. So just being willing to look at things from a different perspective, being humble, all of those things are great things to apply, and I appreciate all of you guys for helping me today.
Wow.
I do too.
Thank you so much. This has been great, and it's what I had a vision for, and I think you have helped or will help a lot of individuals along this leadership journey. The great John Maxwell always says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And thank you for being an influence within your circle of people. And Lewis Media Studio, thank you so much for taking on this task. You've been a phenomenal host, and I appreciate you so much, DJ behind the camera. Thank you to my wife, Ashley, for coming to support, even serving appetizers. And hopefully in the near future, we could do this again. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you.